Before you read that,
Yep.
if I say to you, here's mud in your eye, what is that?
Toast. Yeah.
It's a toast.
It's a toast.
What does it mean though? Anybody know? Here's mud in your eye, you're supposed to be, here's something good for you or positive for you? Well, I did some research. Nobody knows what that means. Nobody. But the best guess is that it's a positive thing related to what you're about to hear now.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, Lord.
As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither he or his parents sinned. It is so that the works of God might be made visible through him. We have to do works of the one who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he said this, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva and smeared the clay on his eyes and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed and came back able to see. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is." But others said, "No, he just looks like him." He said, "I am." So they said to him, "How were your eyes open?" He replied, "The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and told me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went there and washed and was able to see." And they said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I don't know." They brought the one who was once blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on a Sabbath. So then the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see, and he said to them, "He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and now I can see." So some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such signs?" And there was a division among them, so they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say about him since he opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." Now the Jews did not believe that he had been blind and gained his sight until they summoned the parents of one who had gained his sight. They asked him, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How now does he see?" His parents answered and said, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind. We do not know how he sees now, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age, he can speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews. For the Jew had already agreed that if anyone acknowledged him as Christ, he would be expelled from the synagogue. For this reason, the parents said, "He is of age, question him." So the second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner." He replied, "If he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know is that I was blind and now I can see." So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? They ridiculed him and said, You are the man's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we do not know where this one is from. The man answered and said to them, This is what is so amazing, that you do not know where he is from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if one is devout and does his will, he listens to them. It is unheard of that anyone ever opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything. They answered and said to him, You were born totally in sin, and are you trying to teach us? They then threw him out. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, Do you believe in the Son of Man? He answered and said, Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? Jesus said to him, You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he. He said, I do believe, Lord, and he worshipped him. Then Jesus said, I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see might see, and those who do not see might become blind. Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard this and said to him, Surely we are not blind, are we? Jesus said to them, If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you are saying, We see, so your sin remains. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Two men were out walking their dogs on a hot summer day. And because they were thirsty and sweating, they decided they wanted a beer, and they stopped at a bar. One said, Well, what are we going to do with our dogs? We can't leave them out here. And the first man says, Trust me, just follow my lead on this. And he pulls out his dark sunglasses, puts them on, walks his German Shepherd into the bar, and the bartender says, Hey, you can't have a dog in here. And the man says, This is my seeing eye dog. The bartender felt bad, and he said, Oh, okay, well, please come and sit down, and first round's on me. Second man walks to the bar, and the bartender looks up and he says, Wait a minute. You gonna tell me that Chihuahua is the seeing eye dog? And the man stops and says, You mean they gave me a Chihuahua? That's a funny story about blindness, but there's actually a much more tragic story about blindness. About not too long ago, there was a 14-year-old girl named Sarah Reed who suddenly started getting sick all the time, severe headaches, throwing up all the time. She'd get real clumsy and stuff, and they finally diagnosed her as having a massive brain tumor. And the doctors told her family the only way we can save her life is to do surgery on that tumor. But the tumor has wrapped itself around the optic nerve, or nerves in her head, and if we do the surgery, she'll more than likely never see again. And sure enough, that's what happened. They did the surgery, and the damage to the optic nerves was so bad, she went totally blind. But Sarah was a pretty good spirited girl. She decided to devote her life to promoting the cause of helping blind people, and she became like kind of a poster girl for the blind. Now, 10 years later, when she was 24 years old, she was reaching down to pet her seeing eye dog, and she slipped and she hit her head on the side of a coffee table. And the next morning she woke up, opened her eyes, and saw her ceiling, and saw her dog. She could see again. And the doctors were at a loss to explain this. They could not believe it would happen because the damage to her optic nerves is so severe. One of her doctors insisted that this must be, they called it hysterical blindness, meaning some people go blind because of a psychological factor or some trauma that is so severe it just people can't see. And he insisted that that's what was going on. It was hysterical blindness. Well, why would he do that? When he knew the damage to the optic nerve was there was no way physically, there was no certain physical explanation for why she could see. And his answer was, I don't believe in miracles. Because clearly this is a miracle, because there's absolutely no human or medical reason to explain why Sarah could suddenly see again. So who was really blind here? Her doctor. That what he was doing is something that we religious people sometimes do, the scientists sometimes do. There's an actual word for that. And I want any of you to admit that you've ever done this. Woozling. Oh, come on, are you a closet woozler? Yeah, that's the $1 million word for this process where you're so convinced of something. You're so absolutely sure in one part of what you believe in that your conclusion of anything else that challenges that is going to be wrong. Now, scientists do this sometimes when they're convinced of the outcome of an experiment before they even do the experiment. Religious people do this sometimes when they're so convinced that their way of believing in God is such that certain things couldn't happen, like if you absolutely believe that God's way of creating the earth and the universe was in 7 24-hour periods and all that, well, then you got no room for things like dinosaurs, right? Because there couldn't possibly have been dinosaurs. The earth isn't that old, right? Or their tests are wrong, or something like that. Fortunately, as Catholics, we're able to believe that there's never a conflict between science and religion. And that we would have no trouble believing in dinosaurs and the fact that they were around long before humans were ever around, because that doesn't contradict our belief that God created the universe. It just we can challenge how God created the universe, or how long it took, or how we explain that's a different story. So the real sin of the Pharisees in the gospel today was their woozling, right? Their steadfast belief that the man's blindness had to be due to either something he did or something his parents did kept them from seeing the Messiah standing before them. Their adamant belief that no good could come from a sinner like this blind man or this carpenter from Nazareth kept them from seeing the Messiah in front of them. The miracle that obviously was there, that this doctor couldn't see because of his woozling. The Pharisees couldn't see because of their woozling. Now for us, we woozle ourselves sometimes. And perhaps in the last 2 weeks of Lent, where we ramp up to the most important, holiest week of the year, which will remind us totally about why we do all this, why we're here every Sunday, why we give up things for Lent, why we try to purify ourselves and make us holy. That the only way we can do that is to make sure we are always open to God's call, that we don't woozle things and hold on to things so tight, that we don't let God's grace and wisdom touch us, that we don't let God do his God job sometimes because we're so convinced things have to be a certain way. So let us pray for doctors who don't believe in miracles. Let us look at Pharisees whose spiritual blindness kept them from seeing the truth of the gospel. And let us this week look at ourselves to examine what possibly might be getting in the way of us holding on to things so tight that we don't see God's miracles before us as well. Please stand.